Hey guys, it's Christian Ludemann here. In this video, I'll show you how to work with module federation for creating micro frontend applications. I'll show you how to set up from scratch with NX, and also I will give a little bonus if you stick around all the way to the end, where I will show you how I apply it in a real project I use in my own business. If you want to accelerate your Angular career in the fastest way possible, head over to christianludemann.com/accelerator and get started with the free workshop.
So now we'll go through how to create a micro frontend application with NX. So if you look through the documentation, we will see they have some benefits described here, such as it will improve productivity. It will make you able to split up the build into separate apps that can then load each other lazily as you go as you want to access different parts of the application. So usually the architecture is you have a host application which then can load multiple remote applications, and in this particular case we will set up loading using routing, but it could also be in a more dynamic way, so like per component basis. But yeah, it's easy to set up in the route, and that's a usual use case for how you would split up the different remotes host. So then it explains here how to set up the example workspace, which is what we're gonna explore here, and both set up the demonstration here, starting with the static module federation, and then set up the dynamic module federation, and then later we will look at a real world example of how this will work in the real world and what caveats you need to overcome, which I'm overcoming in my example. I'll show you later. So yeah, this is just basic overview of the documentation, and then it goes to show you how to set this up. And now we're gonna go ahead and create the NX workspace. First, we're gonna install the newest version of Create NX workspace to make sure we are fully caught up to date. And then we are going to run Create NX workspace, the latest. And we're gonna here select integrated, and we're gonna select the Angular. So we have the Angular packages set up. Our repository is gonna be called ngmf, and application name we're gonna start with is called dashboard, which is gonna be our host application. And we're gonna take SaaS here. We're gonna say yes to NX Cloud. Then it'll take a little bit of time. We will install the npm dependencies. And now it's fully set up. And let's go through and add the host application, the dashboard. We already have a dashboard app, so it will fail here. So I just set it up with Angular, so we have dependencies for Angular set up already. So now I'm just going to delete the dashboard, existing dashboard app, and we're gonna recreate it as an micro frontend host. And now we have it as we have the different parts, like the module federation setup, and this is the remote we have here. So now we're gonna create the remote. So we have a login remote now. And it's all set up automatically just by running the command. And yeah, that is loading the module federation configuration file is loaded in the webpack files. And then we have the login is exposed in this entry module. So that's all pretty straightforward. So this is for the static module federation setup. And we also have a webpack file for production where you can change the URL. That is particularly relevant when it's the static version. For the dynamic version, we could just change the configuration file it loads, and then it can be changed at runtime, the remote URLs. It's going to resolve the remotes from. So we have a bootstrap file where we are in the bootstrap running the application. Then we have the main, but in loading the bootstrap file. And we're going to need that later for the dynamic module federation. See the different things that's going to be applied automatically when you run the command for creating the host and the remote application. So it's all pretty straightforward. And I have the module federation config file with the remote pointing to a specific remote URL. We're going to create some shared library. Then that is generated here. We have the data access user library. And here we're gonna add the user service. Let's see. Gonna update the entry module for the login. The login application will then use this new entry module. We get the entry component and update that, so it will show the login form with the username and password, which is using the user service. Just gonna make sure it's located correctly. It's gonna restart the TS server. That sometimes is fixing it. If not, it's because it needs to be exported, which I'll export it in the index TS file. And now it should be accessible, which it is now. And we set up the routing now, so we can load that. And we already have so now we're just gonna serve the dashboard, and that will automatically also serve the login application at the same time, and it will serve it on a different port. And now we should be able to access both. They're both running at the same time, and we can navigate in between, and they have the login functionality. We see we are logged in. So we have a fully functioning micro frontend application right now. So from here we can expand on that a bit with creating a dynamic. It basically just means it's gonna load the remote config dynamically, and in this case it's just going to be loaded from assets, but it could be hosted on any static file server. And we have this, we're going to get this import data, metadata, but that's not going to show in the production build, and it has no effect on the user experience. So we can we don't need to make that a concern. And we can convert the dashboard application to load the remote config dynamically. So we're gonna create this file in the assets folder. So we have some file we can load. Then we have this. And then we're gonna change the main. So the main file is loading the dynamic config using a fetch, and then it's gonna bootstrap the app after with that specific config and using the set remote definitions from navel/angular/mf, which is dynamically gonna set the module federations config and make sure it's gonna be run before we run the host application's Angular app. And now we will just omit the remotes from the module federation file, module federations config file, because that is only for the static needs. And we will load the login module. We'll slightly change it, so we use load remote module, and that simply hides some logic that will check if the remote application has been loaded, and if not loaded again. So we just need to give it a little bit more help when we're running in the dynamic mode. So it will check if it's already loaded and will not load it again in that case. And then we can run it, but now we need to use the --dev remotes equals login and other dev remotes, because we cannot extract it automatically with this setup. And now we will run it with this dev remotes login, and we should see it fully working with the dynamic configuration as well as before. And we can go to the side and we will see it working as before. It's all good. Alright guys, I want to show you a real world example of a micro frontend architecture with NX and module federation. So with NX there are some helpers, and actually you can use with NX a generator for converting an frontend to a micro frontend. I'm just going to show you like what is being generated when you do that, because I have that set up on this branch here. So one thing you'll get is this is the static module federation setup, by the way, which is good enough for my needs for this application. So this is my course platform I use for my teaching for my Angular course. And I have an administration app where it's like a CMS backend where I administer the course content, like lessons and sections and such. And then I have the course client, which is for the students to consume the content. So the course client is the host of the micro frontend architecture, and that is consuming the course admin. So there's some caveats. So with you will see you will need to handle with micro frontends, which is the versioning. There are some of these projects that don't have a version specified in the package.json, which is currently failing at runtime if you don't specify some configuration here. So I'm specifying these don't have a required version, so it doesn't fail. So it's just some caveat you need to you can circumvent with this, because I don't care about this. We are, for example, in this case, we are consuming this version from this package, and this is just like a sub package, which doesn't even have a version specified, but it will obviously be the same as this version, for example. So I'm handling some of these cases, otherwise you will see some problems. Besides from this one, this is used in the Webpack config. So we set up the project file to, let me zoom a little bit so it's easier to see, and the project file to both use the novel Angular Webpack browser, so we can specify our custom Webpack config, and we're using a different one for production, where we could change the URL, for example, for the remote for production. But here I am basically just consuming this config file, and that will make sure to set up the module federation config. And yeah, I could overwrite the config as different remotes if needed. And by the way, I am hosting this on Firebase hosting, and I actually want it to be like this, so it's all within one domain, because I set up the domain for the course client, and I want to be able to do course client /admin, and then it will access this micro frontend. So I set that up in my routing. So in my routing, when I go to admin, it will load this micro frontend from the admin app. And of course, for enabling this typing, I'm defining a module here with TypeScript. And yeah, this is we have the main that is loading Bootstrap. It's not really needed here because we don't do the dynamic module federation loading, but we might want that later, so I'm just keeping the options open this way. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this setup. Let me see what else came with it. And yeah, we had the options for the we set the public host, like the URL for this one. And yeah, that is consuming the course client. Course admin is consuming the course client is consuming the course admin, and the course admin then have a serve static, which is what we're going to trigger when we run the course client. It will also run this one, the serve static, so it will run here on this port, and it will serve this one. So we have our entry for the micro frontend here is through the entry module. And so we have so if I want the standalone, I'll run it through this, because then we need the browser module and browser animations module and core module. But if we run it through this, and if it's loaded through the course client app, we already have these modules, and some of them are problematic to load again, like core module you don't want to have loaded again. Browser module, you get an error if you load that again. So for this reason, we are omitting them in the micro frontend entry module, which is going to be loaded from the course client. And yeah, that is having this routes here, and I make sure these are for child, because we will have a main routing set up in the course client. And besides this, it's just a full app that is running within here when we go to /admin. And now this can be built separately, and it's all nicely split up. And for the Webpack module federation setup, it's way simpler here because we're handling all the versioning in the course client setup. And yeah, we have this module here that's pointing to the entry module, and Webpack here, like that, and not much more actually. And then you need to specify this serve static, but all this is basically handled when you just run the convert to with MF, and you can also specify when you create a new Angular app with novel NX that it should be set up as a micro frontend. So it's all pretty straightforward. And yeah, besides the versioning is like the biggest caveat. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You specify the remote URLs to load them in the right destination. When you're doing like this, it will get the remote URLs and ports from the project config with NX, but otherwise, for example, when it's production, you will override it and specify some other URL where it could be hosted on. So yeah, all that's pretty sweet. We can also try and run it and see if you say run the course client, we will see so if I try to run the course client, you run build and serve both of the apps. And now if I open up browser here, I don't have, yeah, and then I can go to admin and then it will run the admin app like this. And I should also run the server as well. But yeah, this is the micro frontend in action. Now it's gonna load the admin app when I navigate here. And I don't have my local server running, so that is failing right now, but that's okay. Yeah, so all good now. The micro frontend setup is working.
If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you want to accelerate your Angular career in the fastest way possible, head over to christianludemann.com/accelerator and get started with the free workshop. See you next time.